Just want to say welcome everybody to our stop here, the next stop of the virtual tour here for December. This month, we are hosting and looking at the wonderful state of Florida. And today's event is sponsored by Florida Power and Light. Before we begin, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jansen Oliver. I'm the market entry specialist here at the German American Chamber of the Southern United States. And I welcome everyone to our wonderful webinar. And now I would like to turn it over to our wonderful President and CEO, Matthias Hoffmann. Matthias.
Thank you very much, Jensen, and good morning from the US. Good afternoon to everyone joining from Germany, and thanks for joining our virtual tour stop, as Jensen mentioned, in beautiful Florida. I think that everyone agrees that Florida is a fantastic state to do vacation, but today we would like to also show you that it can be equally great to do business in and with Florida. And actually, our chamber just launched its chapter in the Tampa area with a kickoff event not even 2 weeks ago. And we're in the process of building and strengthening our German-American community in the region, while we also have our longstanding chamber's official affiliate, the German-American Business Chamber, active in Miami. So if you decide to expand your business activities to Florida, we are here for you with local support and boots on the ground. And I'm more than happy to see today our Florida chapter director, Tobias Borowski, and Thomas Butch from our leadership team on this virtual tour episode, alongside Sherry Ambrosi with Florida Power and Light. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining us today, and I'll give it back to you, Jensen.
Thank you, Matthias. Next, we move on to an introduction of the state of Florida, including its market and industries, by the Director of Economic Development, Ms. Sherry Ambrosi. Sherry?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you all today. As was mentioned, I think a lot of folks are familiar with Florida and know our beaches and our wonderful tourist destinations, but fewer are as familiar with the business side of Florida. So I always love getting to share that story with folks. So I want to just level set a little bit. I'm going to walk you through the company that I work for. I'm going to explain why we're involved in economic development. And then I'm really just going to talk with you about Florida and the business advantages of locating in Florida. So I work for Florida Power and Light, which is the largest utility in the state of Florida. And it's actually one of the largest utilities in the United States. But we're part of NextEra Energy, which is a Fortune 200 company, and we are the largest producer of solar and wind power in the world. So outside of the state of Florida, we build solar and wind installations for corporate clients and utilities, and inside of Florida, we serve 12 million customers as their electric utility. That's about 6 million accounts. And you can see on this map here, I know it's helpful sometimes to orient folks to the state of Florida. So we serve the northwest portion of the state, and then also the northeast area, which would be like Jacksonville, Florida, then going down along the east coast, along the Space Coast, heading towards Miami Beach and West Palm Beach in the south, and then back up in the southwest portion of the state. So think about Naples and Bradenton in that part of the state. I know it's important for a lot of our European businesses that we talk with to understand our commitment to clean energy. And so that's one thing. As part of a large solar and wind developer, we also develop a lot of solar in the state of Florida, and we're very committed to clean energy sources. And so you can see here some of the accomplishments that we've had to help make Florida really as a state a leader in the clean energy transition. And part of the reason we do that is actually it's the most cost-effective sort of type of power in the state. When we're not burning fuel, we're not charging for fuel. And so solar is a great deal, both as we protect the natural beauty of our state and for our customers. So why am I here talking with you about economic development this morning? Well, we are actually at Florida Power and Light, one of the largest companies in the state of Florida. We have the largest market cap of any company in the state of Florida. And we, as a company, invest over $6 billion in the state every year. We operate everything from drones that monitor our equipment to power plants. And so we have a great understanding of what it takes to be successful operating as a business in Florida, hiring people, investing, making location decisions. And so our office is really here. Our Office of Economic Development is here to leverage that expertise that we have to the benefit of businesses that are considering locating or expanding in the state of Florida. So like any typical economic development organization, we provide a range of services. We can help companies try to understand the best place in the state to locate. And we aren't restricted to our service territory. We can provide information about any part of the state of Florida. So if you're not sure where to locate as you're looking around the state, we're happy to work with our partners at the German American Chamber to assist in site location searches. We can assess the infrastructure at a site. We know a lot of companies that manufacture need power and water, and we can help answer questions about how long and how much it'll cost to bring service to a location. We also can help with services like electric vehicle charging, efficient lighting programs, things of that nature. But one of the most important things that we do is we help connect companies to the local communities where they would do business. So making those introductions so that they understand the local rules, they can have people walk them through the process of what it will take to open a business and be successful in a community, and then to get involved in that community so that they can, meet customers and have a positive experience as they're trying to hire. So more specifically about Florida, and not just FPL and Florida Power and Light and why we're in economic development. But as I said, Florida is a large state for tourism. We have over 100 million tourists who come to Florida every year. But what a lot of folks don't know is that if you looked at Florida as an independent economy, we would be the 14th largest global economy. So we have over $1 trillion economy in the state of Florida. We're the third largest state in the US by population. When we talk to businesses, we love to use this analogy, right? If Florida were a stock, right? You all are making investment decisions all the time. Is Florida stock that you would buy? And we think whether you look for growth or you look for value, the fundamentals of Florida are very clear. We have a AAA credit rating, which means we have responsible government that makes responsible spending decisions. So you know that we are not going to have significant cost increases in taxes and those sorts of things over time. We have 0% personal income tax at the state level in the state of Florida, which is very attractive. There are only a few other states in the United States that offer that benefit. But more than that, we are a state with a large and rapidly growing population. And that means an incredible workforce available to our employers. We're one of the largest producers of graduates in science, technology, engineering, and math. And a lot of people, when they think about the United States, they think about Massachusetts or Virginia or some other locations. And those are fantastic states that have their own unique advantages. But when you think of the scale of Florida, we do think it's important to point out just how many graduates we produce overall. And it's significantly more than any of those more maybe top of mind states for those fields. We also are a very diverse state in Florida. We have sort of where the population of the United States is going in the next 10 or 15 years is where Florida is today. And so you can find people in Florida who speak many, many different languages, and also the international business assets that come with that. So law firms and support services providers who are part of the global trade and international business community. Just a couple of brags we love to share about Florida. We're consistently rated the best state in terms of attracting and developing a skilled workforce. That's by an independent, the ratings, you can see the footnotes on the slide here. That's from an independent talent research entity called Lightcast. U.S. News and World Report, which is a major publication here, consistently ranks Florida the best for higher education, like our higher education system as a state among all U.S. states. And consistently, we rank among the best states also for our business tax climate. So here, workforce we know is so, so important to businesses. I did want to spend just a little bit more time here to show you the extent of the education system in the state of Florida. We have 4-year degree granting institutions, as well as a lot of technical colleges. Florida has really been leaning into the transition to a greater emphasis in the United States on technical education and more apprenticeships as well, which we know is familiar to this audience. But you can see here, our workforce of over 10 million people is larger than the population of most US states. So whatever you're looking for in Florida, you should be able to find it just based, again, on the sheer scale and size of the state relative to other US locations. Since I'm speaking with an international audience here, I do also love to talk about our infrastructure. As I mentioned, 100+ million tourists come to Florida every year. we have about 22 million residents who live in Florida. And so the infrastructure that we have here is built to accommodate those 120 million people. So an incredible network of airports, ports, and highways and rail. You can see here, 1 in 5 U.S. exporters export through Florida ports. And we're one of the largest locations for trade and for cargo with Latin America. So Florida has long had that physical proximity, right? We've always had that, and the cultural ties that we have and the business ties that we have to Latin America are just really hard to match when you're looking at other U.S. locations. I know I was asked specifically to speak today about some of the key industries in the state of Florida. You know, again, as a large state, we have so many different industries represented here, but given where we see most German investment, I really am just going to focus on 3 key industries, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have about specific industries in the Q&A. But first and foremost, advanced manufacturing, again, may not be as well recognized outside of the state of Florida, but we're actually one of the largest manufacturing states. Depending on how you measure, we're a top 10 or a top 5 state, but we're certainly one of the fastest growing states for manufacturing in the US. Here you can see just some of the key businesses that are already located in manufacturing in Florida. You know, everything from food and beverage manufacturing to electronic equipment and components. We have a lot of marine related manufacturing in Florida, given our geographic location, and a lot of activity that's related to the military and to defense, and then everything that goes along with that. So the machining and all of the tools that support that. Florida actually has more military installations than most US states. And so we have a lot of workers who come out of the military who bring their skills to our workforce. Next, aerospace and defense. Florida is the 2nd largest aerospace and defense industry in the United States, measured by the number of businesses in the state. And part of that is from our military presence in the state, but also because Florida is the home of commercial space and of the space industry. Most commercial and government launches happen in Cape Canaveral, so where you see Melbourne on the map here. And that's been the case for decades and decades. Years ago, it was mostly government programs, but now it's satellites and a lot of private launch activity. So you see that here with SpaceX and Blue Origin, Boeing, Lockheed, Terran, and like just all of the major players in the space and defense industry are in Florida. They're also in the panhandle of the state because there's a lot of intelligence work that happens in that part of the state. And then Tampa is known a lot for cybersecurity and defense-related industries when it comes to aerospace and defense. But we also have a major aviation industry. So you can see here, South Florida has a large presence, helicopter components, flight simulation and training. A lot of pilots train in Florida. So it's just a huge industry that's spread all throughout the state. And the last specific industry I wanted to talk about is the life sciences. And again, just because we've seen some success with German companies locating in Florida from this industry. So Florida has long been a pharmaceutical manufacturing location, not as much biotechnology, but definitely pharmaceuticals and then also devices. So I can see here, KLS Martin is a German company that manufactures stainless steel facial implants, and they do like 3D printing. So they're like on demand printed for you in Jacksonville. B. Braun opened a facility in Daytona Beach. They make the saline drip bags that are used in hospitals at that location. But you can see a lot of international companies in South Florida, the traditional home for pharmaceuticals in the state, manufacturing everything from transdermal patches to pills. And so, you know, when you work with your economic development professionals in Florida, if there's a particular area of interest or a particular business line that you're in, we can direct you to where that expertise lies in the state. So along those lines, I do always like to share, we at FPL maintain a website. It's poweringflorida.com. It has a lot of information about the demographics of the state. So if you're curious to learn about particular locations, you can see how many people work in a place, the average wage, just so much information that's all available free through the website. There's also a lot more information about all of the targeted industries that we have in the state of Florida. And I want to close out by talking about another tool that we launched. It's called Wonderful, like Wonder with FL, which is the abbreviation for the state of Florida here. We know that businesses are always looking to attract the best talent. And so and we know that people, especially after COVID, were very interested to consider where they lived and to revisit that conversation. And so we created a resource that allows people to learn more about the various businesses and job opportunities and what it's like to live in all different parts of the state of Florida. So if you go to wonderful.com, you can learn and see what it's like to live and work in Florida. And then you can even do it at the regional level. We work with all of our regional partners to provide that information. So cost of living calculators, what are the recreational amenities, who are the major employers, what jobs are open. All of those things are available all the time online on our website, which we make available to employers as well so they can use in their recruiting efforts. So we're really proud of our wonderful website. And so I'm going to close here. We love working with German companies. We see such strong connections between Florida and Germany. We have direct flights. So Miami actually has direct flights to Berlin, Munich, and Frankfurt, Orlando to Frankfurt and Munich, and Tampa to Frankfurt. So 3 Florida cities with direct connection or direct flights. Over 200 German affiliated companies already in Florida. And that includes small and medium-sized businesses and also really large companies like Siemens Energy has one of their US headquarters in Orlando. We have DHL in Plantation, Genoptic in Palm Beach County, where I live. Max Planck has a R&D facility in Jupiter. Linde is in Central Florida. Hanover Life, B. Braun, as I mentioned. Deutsche Bank is a trading floor in Jacksonville. Porsche Latin America is in Miami. Bosch, and the list goes on and on. 51,000 German-born residents living in the state of Florida. So we actually do have restaurants, and you will hear German spoken here. And as was mentioned, 250,000 tourists visiting Florida annually, and we're happy to welcome everyone here. So I will end it there and turn it back over to Jansen and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, thank you, Sherry, for that wonderful presentation and info on the state of Florida. We will now begin our panel discussion with our local German best practice companies who have established themselves in Florida. Before we begin, I wanted to let them introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Tobias. Tobias?
Thank you, Jensen. Yeah, my name is Tobias Borowski. I am not only the director of the Florida chapter for the German American Chamber of Commerce, but also the managing director of Astaris, which is a private label company here in the greater Tampa Bay area in Florida. We are part of the German headquartered Abicor Binzel Group and are mainly focusing on welding equipment here. And we also have a recently founded manufacturing facility for tungsten heavy metal, which is, and Sherry mentioned this, especially for the aerospace and defense industry, which is so strong in the great state of Florida. Guess so much for me, Thomas.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, or good morning from here. My name is Thomas Butsch. I'm the owner and the president now here in Florida for Butsch Corporation. Is it here, or Butsch GmbH in Germany? We run 4 sites, one in Hungary, one in Czech Republic, some in Germany, and one now here in the US. We're dealing with projects with engineering and staffing. Over here more with staffing, in Germany more with projects, working mainly for the automotive industry. And we started last year in August over here. So I'm very fresh in that process of founding a new company. And I think you will wonder possibly that why this guy is doing automotive and he is in Florida. doesn't fit together possibly, but we'll come to that later. My background is I'm an automotive engineer, and I studied in Germany law as well.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much. Thank you, and thanks again for participating in our event, all of y'all and on the panel. So before we begin, I also want to give a brief introduction of how the panel will work today. So our speakers will be asked a series of questions that we feel like highlight the top questions when expanding to the U.S., particularly Florida. These questions will come either from internal questions from myself or questions from our lovely attendees. Should you have a question, please type it in the chat and I'll make sure that I see it and ask the right person to answer your question. And finally, before we begin, I want to remind y'all that today's webinar is sponsored by Florida Power and Light. So let's begin with Thomas. Thomas, how did you come to choose Florida as a location?
Well, as I say, we're dealing with automotive engineering. Our customers are in Tennessee, in Georgia, in South Carolina, in Alabama, Mercedes, Alabama, and Tennessee, for example, is Volkswagen. I've chosen Florida. I mean, I'm the owner of that company, and I've chosen Florida because of the living standard over here. It depends what business you run. If you're a service, you can choose your location. If you are a just-in-time producer, you gotta be with your customer. But since I do not have my customers around me, I can choose my location, and I've chosen that because of the living standard, to be honest. And there is one more opportunity. If you want to attract workforces, the living for them has to be good, and a lot of persons are attracted by Florida. So, which means that like California guys moving from there to Florida and those things. Another reason for me was, of course, the tax over here, the low income tax. It's without, as Sherry said, there's no state income tax. It's only federal income tax, which is, don't get me wrong, I believe it's 15% of the wage. And it's a low income tax for a C corporation. That is possibly what you would found here, not the S corporation. There are differences, but this is law now. And for me, a reason was, I mean, if you're somewhere in the States, you have to travel always. There is no way of doing business without traveling, and you have to fly. That's the fact. So from Florida to Mexico, where a lot of automotive industry is, for me, in my case, is not very far. And to my customers, it's just 1 hour flight. Just for the records, flying from Florida to California is a 5 hours flight. So it's a huge country to make that sure. So, but at the end of the day, to finalize that question, the standard of living in Florida is great. And that's why I have chosen that a part of the others. That's why I personally have chosen that state here.
Thank you. Tobias, same question.
Yeah, on our end, it's a little bit different. We are a manufacturer. We're doing manufacturing and assembly, and I think it's a two-way route. Number one, of course, and I mentioned again, as Sherry said, that aerospace and defense is massive in Florida. So the majority of our customers are definitely in here, and that makes it super easy for us to have our facility and manufacturing site relatively close. Another thing is, and Thomas mentioned this as well, is the tax situation here. It's a very tax-friendly state. So for us to, number one, attract high talented people is much easier than in other states. But number two, also from the shop floor perspective, and for those of you who are interested in industrial manufacturing, the state of Florida is growing their training program massively over the last couple of years. In the area here where we live in the greater Tampa Bay area, we literally have a handful of companies that are producing all sorts of technical, skilled and trained people. So recruiting is relatively easy for us in here. Plus, other than maybe in the northern states, and I think Sherry mentioned this as well, labor costs are a little bit different here, right? So the labor rates here are much lower than in the north. And with good educated people, this is of course giving us a very nice competitive advantage to other areas. And maybe also covering maybe other aspects on this one that maybe mentioned later on. For us, the majority of our customers is either in the United States, I would say like 80% of them, but some are in South and Central America. So the logistics is a massive challenge for us. With the port of Miami, we're almost covering everything of Central and South America, relatively easy. It's very easy accessible, and the area around there is super equipped. On the other side, if it comes to this outbound freight to the America or to other states in the United States, the big advantage here are the low logistics rates. So you have to imagine that literally everything is transported into Florida. Like a lot of goods are coming in here for tourists, for farming, for etc. So all these trucks are empty and need to get loaded somehow. So outbound transport rates for us are extremely cheap. So it's much cheaper for us to send customer goods from here to Washington as it would be, for example, to ship it from Boston to Washington. It's more expensive, even if it's around the corner. So the logistic part of it is also something where we feel like the state of Florida is the right choice, and it is for almost 25 years now.
Thank you, Tobias. So you mentioned manufacturing and logistics, so I'm going to turn this next question to Sherry. Sherry, how does Florida's energy infrastructure support the growth of high demand industries like Tobias mentioned, manufacturing and logistics?
Sure. So Florida is very fortunate that we've been a growth state for some time. So the utilities in the state are regulated, and we plan over a 10-year horizon looking at anticipated growth. So we build our infrastructure to accommodate the future that we expect to see in the state. And then all of the major utilities in Florida have folks who are similar to me who are here to work directly with industry to make sure that we're meeting their needs, and that as they grow and expand or open a new facility, that we're here to help you understand what it's going to take, to help you plan for that, and then to stay with you through that whole process. So, I think you'll find it's a very welcoming, very friendly, very pro-growth state here, and that's reflected from the utilities and on all other aspects that support industry growth.
Awesome, thank you, Sherry. Thomas, could you share possibly any obstacles you might have faced when you were establishing your business in Florida?
Unmute. Unmute is always good. Sure. It started, I mean, I did that all on my own. I didn't have a lot of people helping me, so I had to find the right lawyer. I had to find someone doing my taxes, and I found, and that's good in Florida, you find German, I speak English, but you find German-speaking people doing that, German-speaking lawyers from Germany. The first obstacle was, okay, what is the right entity to found? Is it an LLC? Is it a C corporation, an S corporation? There's so many things to take care of. Then I had the labor law is, I mean, I studied law in Germany, and labor law is my thing in Germany, but it is different here. It's a lot different. People are different. Of course, it's different country, and the most maybe funny thing what I discovered is, I mean, the wording is different. I was searching for an automotive engineer or automotive quality technician. For me, in my German understanding, for example, there is someone working in the automotive producing industry. Over here is someone working in a car dealer. So this is just a little thing, yeah, but you have a job posting, you spend like $300, $400, $500 for that, or dollars for that. And then at the end of the day, you see that you get applications for a very much different thing. And this takes time. Another thing is, which I didn't take very much into consideration, we have over here a non-compete situation you can have with your employee, or your employees can have a non-compete contract or covenant with an employer, which do not allow like working for next employer, or maybe for next employer in the same field. So you got to take care of those things. Those are the main issues I had. I did not have a lot of issues with like finding an office or something. We rent something, which is very easy. The location, I personally find it very interesting to have the right location at the very beginning. Like when it comes, I'm in a Tampa Bay region. There are over 4 million people living here. One obstacle was, okay, when I just remember that, one obstacle was the commuting time. I mean, not just that you live in Tampa means that you live in Tampa. Tampa is huge. And everywhere you travel, you commute is half an hour. So if you employ someone, you gotta make sure that that person is close to you or having a home office. So this yeah. We have other cities like Miami is a very large city in terms of like length. But when you live in Miami, again, you don't live in Miami. You live somewhere in Miami. This is an obstacle I had to really take care of.
Awesome. Thank you. Sherry, are there any like resources to follow up with that resources or like information that you know of that's in Florida that helps with like make that more clear so somebody doesn't come and is completely, just flooded with all that information?
Sure. So there are a number of guides that are provided in Florida that sort of help with that decision about the right type of legal entity to create, how, all of the steps that are required to register properly in the state of Florida. I'm happy to share them with you, Jansen, after, so we can share them with other people. But there's like a small business guide. There's some other business publications that provide that information. And then there are also a number of, we call them soft landing or global like landing points in the state of Florida. So imagine sort of like a co-working space that's specifically designed to help global businesses as they want to enter into the US. So a lot of these tend to be affiliated with universities. They're all over the state of Florida. So they provide you that sort of short-term temporary space, and they're often co-located with other business support services that are provided free in the state of Florida. So our federal government has the Small Business Administration that provides services. And at the local level, they provide these centers called Small Business Development Centers. So they provide free business planning assistance and connections to professional services. A lot of them are located at the same places as these global landing locations. And so when you work with the chamber, when you work with a local economic development professional to ask, where might I consider to work with the state? They'll help point you to those places so that you get all of the resources that you need from the beginning.
Awesome. Thank you for that information.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
add
Thomas.
one thing to
Yeah.
just one thing which I remember or I want to add. It is very important to know that when you come here, that you cannot do any profession you want to just do. There is sometimes a licensing board. So coming here and doing, for example, HVAC or like AC systems needs a license here. So you cannot just come here and do that. So it's a licensing board. But Shara, I guess you have also information about that.
Yeah, so a lot of that's handled through the state's Department of Business and Professional Regulation or license. And so what we can do is send the guide, the guide that we have. It's not our guide, but there's a state guide that sort of outlines all of those steps and all of the places that you need to look to get that information, and it brings it into one place. So yeah, I'll send that to Jansen.
Awesome. Thank you both for this information. Tobias, one final question for market entry. How do the regional differences within the U.S. influence your overall business strategy here?
Well, yeah, we discussed about this one a little bit before. I mean, it clearly depends a little bit on your business, what you want to go for, how close you want or need to be with your customers. Of course, if you're some of the transplants of the big OEMs in Alabama or in the Carolinas, you rather want to be close to these people. But other than that, the state just offers so much here to help and support and grow these businesses if you were around the United States. The tax climate, we mentioned this one, and one other thing, and Sherry mentioned this before. The political climate in the state of Florida is extremely business friendly. I'm not saying other states are better or worse than we are, but just as a kind of an example, for people like us who were very much dependent on imports, when it came to like this little port strike situation a couple of months ago, the state of Florida actually announced to get the National Guard in to get the ports operated. That is a massive help for people like us who are depending on imports from either Europe or Asia. So these kind of, it sounds like little things, but they're very important, especially if it comes to these supply chain issues, which we have seen over the years, potentially starting with COVID. But I mean, they're just lingering around here, and that is just so much easier in the state of Florida than in other states.
Awesome, thank you. Moving on to workforce, staying with you, Tobias. What are the biggest differences, in your opinion, in workforce and experience and workforce regulations and practices between the U.S. and Germany, and how have you adapted to them?
Well, in general, I mean, there's between U.S. and Germany. I mean, between certain U.S. states and Germany, I think that will maybe makes it a little bit easier to explain, because the labor standards are totally different depending on the state you are in the United States. So, for example, Florida has an extremely liberal labor law. We're an at-will state, which makes it very, very easy and convenient for employees to adjust and fluctuate with their business decisions. That is obviously something which is totally different in Germany. Like adjusting is something which takes a lot of time, has a lot of legal areas to consider, and is in most cases extremely expensive. So that is totally different in here. I'm not saying it's for free, but it's definitely less complex and less expensive from an employee perspective. On the other hand, as I mentioned before, the labor law here is giving us the opportunity to hire people and train them on the job, or getting them even from these training organizations, which is a little bit easier than in Germany, where you have to have a certain qualification for certain things. Well, the qualification comes also with some benefits. Totally agree on that. But as I mentioned before, companies here or organizations here are able to deal with this. So from a labor perspective, a very, very positive state to be, a very easy to run state with. Yeah, there's just a lot of workforce available here for each and any kind of a business, from shop floor up to the talents. So that's a big plus, I would say.
Cool. Thomas, how has the diversity of the U.S. workforce, staying with workforce, impacted your talent acquisition strategies? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Well, our strategy in attractive workforce was, well, we are more a self-managed organization. I don't know if you're familiar with Holacracy. I'm trying to get people deciding a lot of things themselves. When I came here and I employed my first person, and I said, well, you're going to decide. You are more like a person in my company deciding what you want to do. I had some issues with that, because people sometimes were afraid to decide things in terms like not doing something wrong. And so there was a big step for me to go, and I changed myself a little bit. When it comes to attracting talents, we're not working with local universities, because we need more like educated or people being long term in the profession. So we're attracting people here with home office or with hybrid work. That's our thing, which Tobias cannot do because he's a production company. Well, but as I said, we don't have that much problems. My problem is more than that we have those non-compete situation. Sherry, you you know what I'm talking about, that people cannot work for the same industry very close. Some have that, and this is an issue for us. It's a very big issue. So we, like, if someone was working for a staffing company doing, I don't know, automotive engineering, and another staffing organization for automotive engineering would want to employ that person, and they have that non-compete situation, they cannot work. It's like for half a year they cannot work, and this is something we deal with, and it's not very easy, to be honest.
And I think that's probably the same challenge throughout the United States. I don't think that's a state-specific issue, but certainly understand it is very different than a lot of other markets.
Well, there are states which do not have that, which do not allow. That's Oregon, I think. That's California, some things. Yeah, yeah. But this
Yes.
may change in the future. There are some regulations changing, but because this is a very, this for us is a big issue. But it's still, we can get around that.
Awesome. Staying on the topic of workforce, Tobias, I know with you being in manufacturing, you rely a lot on skilled labor. So how does the availability of skilled labor in Florida compare to the other U.S. regions? I know Sherry touched on this during her presentation, but I wanted to hear your experience.
Well, in general, I've seen over the last, whatever, 10 years, 10, 15 years here in the US, that there is much more emphasis on educating, especially technical educating, of also like lower scale jobs, which happens across the board, no doubt about that. Well, in Florida in particular, the current administration basically signed a bill in place that they want to be number one in the United States in a couple of years from now. So they're investing a lot in state education here, and there's funding available for that. So for us, again, that is a relatively easy thing to have multiple training facilities around here, which are pretty close to what we call the German Berufsausbildung. They're not far away from that, and this kind of a training, what they're doing is not like a whatever 2-week training. It's a training course which is 1+ years for them, and they're becoming great machine operators, and in all other areas and in the technical facilities that you might need to want to employ. So for us, that's a big thing, and again, this education technically comes for free, because you're hiring these people out of these technical colleges or of these education areas, and there's really nothing where you have to invest 3 years in an apprenticeship or in a Berufsausbildung, what you have to do in Germany. So very nice for us in the state of Florida, and a big plus for industrial manufacturing, that's for sure.
Awesome, thank you. Sherry, staying on that topic, does Florida's proximity to Latin America like kind of affect that, not only in workforce, but also, you know, partnerships and stuff like that, its closeness to Latin America?
I think the closeness with Latin America is probably more reflected in industries and trade rather than in the technical workforce here. I think that the technical education that's provided in Florida and the grant and training programs that go along with that are pretty evenly distributed. So you see it in rural Florida just as much as you see it in some of the more urban locations in the state. But certainly you get a lot more language skills in Florida than you get in some other locations. Just the percentage of our workforce that speaks a language other than English as their first language and speaks at a level of proficiency for business is very high. And so, you know, if you're doing business in other regions, you know, Florida's typically been one of the top locations globally for Latin American headquarters. There is some discussion about flights. It's actually easier to fly within Central and South America coming from Miami than it is from in some of those countries. Just the flights are so much more robust. And then you have around that all of the professional services. Just so many Latin American headquarters are based in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, that you see, you know, all of the ancillary services clustered in those areas. I'm not aware of as much technical education in that space, but look, we're very, very happy to be such a diverse state with such strong connections to Latin America.
Awesome.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Just
Thomas. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I want to add one thing. I don't know the audience, but I assume that some of you think of moving also to Florida when you found your company here. And Sherry, we're talking a little bit about education. I have two daughters. They study in Florida. One is engineering and one is like in health. The education system here is good. It's really, really good. And it's comparable to Germany. It is not as expensive as a lot of people think. It's doable, and my daughters enjoy. There are big universities, so if you have kids and if you come here, big universities, and they're really, really good. Which means, on the other hand, that the workforce from those universities are good as well.
If I can jump in, that's actually one thing that really does set Florida apart as a state is the in-state tuition for students in Florida. If you live in the state, is very, very competitive compared to other states. Our tuition is significantly lower than most other public university systems. And that's part of why we've had such great results with educational attainment and the rankings that we have as a state for higher education. One thing that the ranking agencies look for is access. So a number of people are able to go to university like first in their family and enjoy the benefits of mobility and that's associated with that. So and I'm a product of Florida Public Schools from K-12. I have two children in school here as well, and we also have a lot of choice in schools in Florida. So depending on where you live, if your children are very interested in engineering or the arts or any particular field, medical, they actually can start to pursue those specializations as early as middle school and then continue that through high school. So there's a lot of focus on providing different choices to people in education in the state.
Thank you, all of you, for that wonderful, this wonderful information. I mean, it's great. Moving on to logistics, because I know people definitely wonder that when they're moving to the U.S. Tobias, could you share any unexpected logistic hurdles that you faced when you integrated your supply chain to the southern U.S.?
Not necessarily any hurdles. I mean, a lot of benefits, obviously, that they are coming with this, but really nothing which is a kind of a bottleneck or something like that. Sherry mentioned that before. From an inbound perspective, we have a huge number of seaports in here. So we are importing a lot via Miami, Port Everglades, or even going a little bit out of state. Mobile, Alabama has a fantastic deep water seaport where a lot of containers are coming in. Or even if you go a little bit up, Savannah, Georgia is helping this a lot. So from an inbound perspective, very easy. And obviously that would also be for outbound if you're exporting via sea. From an air shipment perspective, as mentioned before, super huge airports in here. Miami is definitely a hub for Florida. I mean, there's a lot of movement in this one, also from a cargo and logistics perspective. And let's not forget that Atlanta Airport is not that far away for most of us, so technically that would help as well. And from a trucking and railway standpoint, same thing. I think we saw a map that Sherry shared before with railway here in Florida, which is great. So for example, on our industry, we're importing a lot from China. Depending on what rates we are getting, we might end up like using seaports on the East Coast and just put it on the train and get it down here in Florida in less than 3 to 4 days. So really nothing that is like a challenge. It's more an advantage here from a logistical perspective.
How do you manage sound like you mentioned multiple logistics partners. How do you manage the risk of dealing with multiple logistics partners?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a risk to handle multiple. I mean, I normally, from a risk perspective, I'm trying to avoid to just deal with one, right, or with a handful. So having this nice setup here, especially in the area of Tampa Bay and Miami, where each and every larger logistics company is around here, and that includes the German DHL, as much as Kuehne + Nagel, which is very big in here, but all the other ones, the UPS, the FedEx, everybody has massive locations in here. So, I mean, depending on what you want to achieve, you can spread the risk easily, and you will always find something and someone. And of course, it's also for the bidding and quotation process very nice, because within a couple of hours, you normally get the best quotes from multiple of these carriers. Doesn't matter what you want to go for, inbound or outbound. So that makes it relatively comfortable for us in here.
Awesome. Thomas, I wanted to ask about your customer base. So when you got here, did you find that the strategies that you used in Germany still worked with the American client base, or did you have to adapt new customer strategies to attract customers?
Well, I thought I come here and I say, well, I'm German, and I speak to a German company. I come here and say, well, I'm German. We work for you in Germany. We want to work for you here as well. It doesn't work. It just did not work. And it's just because they're say, well, you work in Germany for them. Doesn't matter. I don't care. So, but at the end of the day, the system works as in Germany or in Europe. You have to speak to the people, to the right people. You have to. They say I don't play golf. That a lot of business is done in Florida on the golf course. I have started golfing, but I don't do that yet. But my customers are as I said, in the automotive industry, so I got to go there. I gotta maintain relationships with them as the same thing as in Europe. So people out here are reliable. So when you gotta, the difference is in wording sometimes. When people say I may not need that now, that means I don't need it. In Germany, you would say, okay, I call again, but there are little like differences in the wording, but you get used to that. You have to adapt to that, yeah. But other than that, attracting customers, same thing. I don't know if you, Tobias, had another.
Well, I think one of the most important things that you just mentioned is the relationship way of doing business here. Yeah, in the United States, and that is not Florida specific, but in the southeast, I mean, it's very much more than maybe it's in the northern part of the United States. These relationships are extremely important. I also don't play golf, and I'm not planning to do that. But as you said, there's a lot of business done on golf courses. But there's also a lot of business done in any other areas, right? Attracting customers is very much done. I mean, we attend trade shows. There's a lot of trade shows around, and people say like, "Oh my gosh, you're spending so much money in there, and you don't get anything back." Well, you get the relations back, yeah, and that is really what it counts. And there's a lot of things where you don't not necessarily get business awarded because you're the cheapest or you have the best quality or something like that, but it's because of the relationship that you have with your customers. And if you're willing to invest in such relationship, then you normally find good business practices and working with people pretty decently. And it's a while until you adapt from a German mindset, because a German mindset is more rational. Here, the rational part is there, but again, the relationship part is the stronger one. And our customers in general, they make a decision based on the relationship and not necessarily on the rational behind the business.
Yeah. Let me just add one thing to that. I am member of the American Society of Engineers and the American Society of Quality, which is where I'm living in my professional life, you know. So I have a lot of contacts there, and I'm a member of the German American Chamber of Commerce, where I met Tobias or other persons. We don't do necessarily business together, but we share the same ideas and we share opinions about whatever we do. So and this is what I would urge you, when you come here, be member of something. I would say be member of the German American Chamber of Commerce, because that helps really in any matter you need.
Awesome. Thank you all for that information. So because I'm looking at the clock. This is now what we're gonna allow a couple minutes. If any of the audience wants to turn off their mics and ask directly a question to our panelists, and go do so now. Going once, going twice. Okay. Then my final question would be for all of you would be that I think if there was one thing, and we'll start with Sherry, if there was one thing you would want somebody looking to expand to Florida to know, what would be that one thing? Sherry, no pressure.
For me, selfishly, I say take advantage of the economic development support that's here, right? We're here, the chamber is here. There are so many economic development organizations in the state who are here to help you answer these questions. We know, most businesses don't make these decisions a lot, right? You make the one decision, every 10 or 15 years, and it's really important. And so that's why we're all here, is to provide the support you need and to answer the questions that you have.
Thomas.
Okay. My final statement is, I guess you have my contact details. If you have any question, or if you need an opinion, I would not give you any legal consulting or something. I cannot do that. But if you need an opinion, give me or send me an email or call me. I don't know how the information is been transported, but send me an email. I'm happy to answer anything you have with my real honest opinion.
Tobias.
Well, I think, and Sherry mentioned that, and I'm very happy for that. So Florida is the place to be if you want to combine like a growth state with great capabilities for your business, and where you find happy employees. And I think this is something where people struggling these days and getting everything together. And it's all in one hand here, and it's just the perfect place to grow your business or to start from scratch. I can definitely say that. And of course, it's the same on my end that Thomas just mentioned. If there's any questions, anything what we can help on a one-on-one, in English, German language, whatever is preferred, we are here to help. This is what we do. And before a decision is made, it's always good to chat a little bit. We're open 24/7, I would say, also for German hours, business hours. So and then I know Matthias and Jensen, you're the same way. Let's talk about it. Let's find it out. And if we can answer everything in our true and honest opinion, we're more than happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you all. So the last thing I will say is thank you to all our panelists, and thank you participants for joining on this Stop of the Virtual Tour for Florida. I have left my information there. Please reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about the Florida market. I will connect you with any of these lovely panelists, and I know they'd love to talk to you, as they said. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And we will be back next month in the new year for the state of Oklahoma. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Florida Power and Light, for sponsoring this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.